two new guests here. Recording in progress, yes. Welcome. Piotr, you've been here before, but maybe since we're so few, we can introduce ourselves. I'm Ole Johansson. I'm part of the CycloneDX industry working group, but also very interested in the Exchange API, especially the discovery phase. I work as a consultant, focusing a lot on what needs to be done because of the coming European Cyber Resilience Act. Okay, Piotr.
Yeah, I'm a PMC of the Apache logging services, especially the Log4j sub-project. I'm currently working on an STF project to secure Log4j, since you probably heard the name of the library somewhere. Yeah,
we
so
use it
I'm
as an example in every
interested from
presentation.
Yeah.
Pavel.
Yeah. Hi. I'm a founder of a startup called the Reliza. Also, I'm a DevOps consultant. So we're building inside the Reliza Hub a lot of functionalities with CycloneDX, like the SBOM storage, retrieval, merging, based on like CycloneDX tooling. So Exchange, that's why I'm joining this Exchange things, because this very much aligns with what we are doing right now. But yeah, so I'm very interested in this part.
Cool, welcome. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but let's try. Sakib.
Okay. Hey, it's Sakib.
Sakib. Okay.
Yes. So I work in a supply chain security department in my company, and I mainly focused on creating, consuming SBOMs, right, for our products. And one of the test case and use case we are looking in future is like a storage of the SBOMs we generate, and then retrieval of them and like storing. So that's why the Koala project, the Transparency Exchange API, interests me, and I'm looking forward to see how I can help and utilize it.
Okay, cool. So some news. As you all know, hopefully, the CycloneDX specification, the core specification of the project, is on the way to become an ECMA standard. We have a working group within ECMA called TC54 that moves the CycloneDX specification, which is a huge specification when printed out, hundreds of pages, takes that into a formal process for standardization. What we've ensured with this is that the community within CycloneDX that is very fast moving has all the development rights, all the change rights to the specifications, and ECMAS takes the output of our process, community process, and standardize that within the ECMA process. Last week, we formed two working subgroups to the core TC54 CycloneDX project. And one of them is exactly what we're going to talk about today, the Transparency Exchange API. So the idea is that we work here, and the output from what we do will become our input to the TC54 working group as well. We formed a second working group at the same time that will focus on the package URLs, the PURLs, and make that an ECMA standard. The package URLs basically come from About Code, Philip Ombredam, and has been managed in a GitHub repository, more or less. So we're taking that and making it a more official standard. The trick here is Hello, Salve. Oh, we have more coming. Welcome. So, hello.
Hello, hello.
So, I just mentioned that we started 2 working groups, subgroups in the ECMA TC54 project, and one of them is the Transparency Exchange API. So what we're doing here will become an ECMA standard, and it's on the way. The second work group we formed was for the package URLs and the versioning standard that goes hand in hand with that. So that's very exciting and means that we will have to come up with something that can be standardized. So we all made some very brief introductions. Salve, you may want to mention a few words about yourself.
Hey, am I sharing my video at the
Yes.
moment? Awesome. All right, so hello. My name is Salve Nilsen. I'm based in Oslo, Norway. I'm mostly interested in this topic because I'm involved in the CPAN security group, and one of the discussions we're having there is introducing SBOMs into the supply chain there. And one of the problems I've been trying to figure out is how SBOMs are supposed to be communicated across the different links in this supply chain. So I'm thinking this forum is a relevant place to have discussions around this and figure out things and something. So I'm hoping this is true, and if so, that I can contribute a little. So I'm mostly here to learn at the moment and ask pointed questions to see if this open source community can get a little bit on the SBOM side of metadata sharing instead of having its own little thing going on.
Yeah, we had that discussion earlier with Piotr and Apache tooling as well. So we have a lot of interesting things to discuss here. Simons.
Yes, hi. I work for Fujitsu as a security specialist, but I'm also involved in a team that produces a dependency track. So I have had for many years a great interest in how bombs might be communicated, but also vulnerability information, so sort of VEX, BDR, etc. And in the last year, attestations as well.
Yep.
And as we've already discussed in past meetings, there is so much that is going to be necessary for that, from the point of view of discovery to authentication, etc. I mean, I remember during Log4j, seeing my then manager basically having to reach out to scores upon scores of suppliers to see what their position was. And if we get things right, and if it's implemented in tooling, that kind of crap can be avoided in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We share that vision. Vinod, do you want to say something? Hi.
Hey, can you hear me? Yep.
Can hear you.
Yeah, I'm Vinod. I'm a OWASP volunteer, not representing my employer or anyone here. So yeah, I primarily help with the outreach and social media activities for CycloneDX and dependency track projects. So I'm just here to see how can I help the working group and make things move forward. Yeah, that's
Cool.
it.
Steve Springett showed up for a few seconds and started recording, handed over the controls to me, and left. He's at the RSA conference this week. I also want to remind everyone that we're recording this and we'll be publishing it on YouTube. So that everyone is aware of that. And Salve, I'm in Sollentuna, just north of Stockholm. And we had
Oh, great.
a small amount of snow today, which I hate.
That sounds like
Totally.
you are in the northern climes.
Yeah, I don't like that. So let's move on to our topic. Let's see. Do you see the document right now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a document, and it's still called use cases, but I kind of took control of that and added a lot of stuff. In last meeting, our discussion was based mostly on my presentation. So I took the input from our discussion and my presentation and tried to merge that a bit. In the future, we may want to divide this document into a separate use cases, requirements, and maybe a solutions document that specifies the output we agree on. But right now, it's just one document. The idea here is to find a solution both to actually publish artifacts, SBOMs, VDRVX, other things, to be able to search them, get insights, but also to discover where do I find them based on some sort of identifier. Hi, Matt. Welcome. Do we have Matt there?
I had to agree to stuff before it let me go off mute. Mute. Hello.
Welcome. So we're going through this document. I hope that you have access to it. In some of this is old and we need to update it, but I think it's pretty good shape. We define a couple of elements. The CLE life cycle enumeration is a separate document we've been working on in OWASP. I don't think that's a CycloneDX project. I think that's an OWASP separate project. Regardless, we have requirements to figure out. This is how we communicate and basically end of life, end of support on a product or a product version. And we've been discussing to and from whether this is part of the SBOM or not. And we can have that. So what I've done is I merged the use cases. I had a few in my document. They're written in very different ways. So I think we have to go over the text later on. I also tried giving each use case an identifier so we can easily refer to specific use cases as we continue our work. But we have automated discovery, automation based on product name identifier. This is based on an SBOM. I already have an SBOM. How do I find the rest of the documentation, especially VEX VDR files and other things? Artifact retrieval, life cycle status, summarized, the insights, asking very specific questions to the SBOM. That involves actually having something like dependency track, something that parses the whole SBOM. Then we have some developer. Last time we came up with components for inclusion in products by other project developers, libraries, toolings, other things. We have the business consumer, we have regulators. I call them external now because they're not customers or vendors. Maybe we need to change that terminology. Potential customers, hacker or competition, and potential open source user. we can go through them again later, and we've taken the IETF definition when we write text. As we formalize the text, we shall use those terms. So we have some requirements on the protocol. I haven't gone through them specifically, but then I added some text on what the whole API needs. We need a discovery. We need some sort of index when we actually reach a vendor's repository. We need to figure out how to make it possible not having to download 10 years of old versions every day. But we need to figure out how to do that in an effective way. Transparency collection, that's the collection of artifacts for a specific product and version. So now here we will get a list of all the supported versions and unsupported versions of a given product. Here we have reached a version and get all the documents, SBOMs, VEX, and other artifacts, right? And then we have the insights. We need to figure out where to place them, but I added them here. I moved our text on authorization and authentication from last meeting, where we said that we propose an HTTP bearer token, that the software that gets it, like dependency track, shouldn't try to parse it. It should just take the token and use it while accessing the API. But the token can actually include, if it's a yacht, can include authorization, which products that I'm authorized to use, or a customer identifier that the vendor use. I mean, that's up to the other piece of the puzzle, the server side. Okay. So let's go through this and we can have a discussion. I started writing some text on the discovery. That's the process where a user with a product identifier can discover and download artifacts automatically with or without authentication. And I took the picture I made for my slide deck, where we have a product with identifier. We get an identifier, a TEI, use DNS to find the website, and we get the index. And from the index, we get a collection for a specific version, and then we get all the documents we want. This is a multiple steps. Then I start discussing the actual URN, the syntax for that, various types. We probably need to add text and examples for each type. And there's probably many more types. How we use DNS to resolve this. We can have failover, we can have a single entry, but also we can have no DNS and say, well, we have no URI records, then we'll use it as a simple website, but we will go to a well-known URI that we have to register, the .wellknown TEI, to figure something out. At that URL endpoint where discovery ends, discovery leads to a definite URL for a given product. We will have to have an index, and we need to start thinking about how that works. For instance, here in Europe, when we get the CRA, we need to store these 10 years after last sale of a product and have it available. Maybe not for end users, but at least for authorities. So it's going to be a pretty huge index if it's just one file. Then we have the collections, and the collection is a set of files, and we have a collection index, I think, but we have to figure that out together. I made some notes. I was in another meeting. Don't remember which it. Maybe it was the ECMA meeting. Bomb trees, one bomb linked to another. So in the artifacts, we could have one SBOM that is the core for a product that has many component SBOMs as well. How will we retrieve those? Will we prefix the names of those with a URL we had or something? A bomb with external reference to another vendor, then we leave the website, we leave the collection. How do we handle that? And document trail, if I upgrade my SBOM, so I have an old SBOM, but I found something wrong in that, so I update the SBOM with a new bomb identifier. Should we have a document trail? So that's what I've done with the document. Is this something we can start working on?
I just had one thought as you were getting to the end there, talking about discovery. Would there be any utility in implementing support for requesting an SBOM by profile? So in other words, you're saying that you want to have one which matches like the legal profile rather than NTIA minimum elements. So this is implementing what's been done in the bomb maturity model. So I'm not sure if Matt can perhaps speak on this better than I can, but it seems it would be useful that you can actually query using information in that model to basically narrow down what kind of stuff it is that you're actually interested in.
Yeah,
But,
sorry, I took an interrupt. So what? But I was channeled. So what was the question of me?
I was saying, would there be a benefit to incorporating into any of this the work that was done in the bomb maturity model, specifically like relating to, say, for instance, profiles, so that you could actually request a particular profile?
Yeah, I think there I had some thoughts before you asked that question, but let me just say that, you know, SCVS and the profile for NTIA is interesting. The problem is it's only SCVS is only really meaningful if you're meaning to tag data and, you know, cement, you know, or prove maturity. Not necessarily for search capabilities, you know. I think the fundamental problem with a bomb repository is well, the fundamental problem is identifying the component clearly, because CycloneDX, the metadata component, only has a required field of name. So yeah, I can identify, I can say, give me this bomb based upon a serial number. That's well and good, but that's not how I'm going to be searching it as a user. If I really want to reference bombs, that the whole purpose of this is to be able to reference bombs that are posted to a registry, if you will, is to clearly identify the name and version of the component I'm trying to get the bomb for. And that speaks to NTI minimum elements. That's the most important thing to me. That's use case number one. It's not searching by serial number. I mean, that's great for bomb links and for auto, you know, if I'm following a chain of bombs or looking for a VDR or whatever. But by and large, the majority use case is I'm doing I'm creating a BOM for my software, and I want to reference a BOM that's been posted publicly someplace that's trusted, that has some type of verification that it's been posted by a trusted, signed, verified entity. That's the fundamentals of it all to me.
Yeah, I took some notes here and I wrote the same, that we have two different issues here. We have one part of the API that should get signed artifacts as the vendor has published them, and we should be able to validate the signature. Another part, the vendor can of course have multiple SBOMs for a product, CycloneDX, SPDX, CycloneDX complete, CycloneDX one level. But then we have the need to create on-demand SBOM data, but maybe that's part of the Insight API where we query stuff but don't get original documents.
Well, I think that so maybe my viewpoint is heavily flavored by a meeting I just left, which is I just reviewed a security policy document for a new AI project where we're adding GitHub Actions, and we're creating a policy where you're not allowed to use any GitHub action unless you go to the catalog, read BOM catalog that doesn't have a verified logo on it, meaning that the push was done by a verified member of that organization. So you're not allowed. So it goes back to the same thing I think we require like an OpenSSF in terms of the package managers. The package managers using SigStar, we were trying to go towards like a metadata block. So when you make an inquiry of a catalog, you get a consistent set of metadata that includes the things I just mentioned. Plus it has things like, the means to verify signage and things like that whoever pushed it. So you can actually eventually go to, like, if you have a log or a transparency log like SigStar has, you can actually verify that it was signed properly and get the SHAs and everything if you want to indirectly for the things. But yeah.
I think a question here is for an implementation. I think the basic need here is to be able to download the documents we need and get the daily VEX update and that kind of stuff. But should we need to discuss whether or not being able to have these Insight queries.
Well, I think that it comes to perspective. It's kind of like if I'm the publisher, what you described is true. So that I know my serial number, I know my component, and I'm looking for. But if I'm looking to use it also as a reference to say, has this component I'm referencing from my BOM changed and their dependencies changed and hence their vulnerabilities changed? That's a different angle. And that requires a different thought process in terms of how you design the API. And that requires like things like Mark was bringing up, which is extra metadata, because name is not sufficient. You have to take a stand saying the metadata that we can search on is the name, but that's always unclear because different people in my BOM, when I go to Sonotype or SNCC or whoever, I don't always get the same name for the same component. It's whatever they have in their database. So I need to be able to do a fuzzy search on the name and version and maybe even a commit level. Sometimes I have a commit level from like a GitHub commit, a SHA or hash from there. So I need to be able to search on things, as a group or as a combinatorial key of some kind.
Yeah. But I don't think we should go down that rabbit hole in this group because we do that in almost every other group. Naming problem.
The rabbit hole is kind of like, if to go all the effort of creating API and you want to get people to use this thing,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's a very valid use case. And I'm speaking on behalf of, I will say that I'm speaking on behalf of IBM and 2,300 products and all
Oh,
their
yeah.
variants. So
All the versions.
I will not use this unless you give me that the features I just described, because I'm not gonna deposit my stuff in this thing. I might use the API and I might convince IBM to host a private version of this, but we will put it on our own access control. We might grab the API standard, the Koala standard, whatever it is, but we're not going to make it public, and we're going to own our own access control. But what we will do is we'll continue producing our own bills of materials, and we might want to, if people do use this one for public purposes, like if we have an agreement with Maven or whatever, some package manager hosts their bombs or whatever, then I would hoping we can create a method that I can generate bombs from SCA tools or from whatever tools, artifact scanners, and then be able to go to the thing and say, can I reference their bomb? Can I pull in their bomb? That's kind of how I want to use it. To me, that's like use case number 2, if not number 1.
Okay.
I think before I will go, I think Salve is patiently waiting. I think he has some questions. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for asking newbie questions here, since this is my first meeting and I barely heard of this a few weeks ago. So, first of all, my perspective is from an open source ecosystem perspective. Like on CPAN, we have authors. They have metadata that they want to share about state of their project, contact information, where the Git repository is, for example, and a whole bunch of version name, of course. And the reason I'm here is because the Cyber Resilience Act is also asking new fields to come into this, like security contact point and some other stuff around the open source steward role. I'm thinking and assuming that from this upstream perspective, it's useful for downstream users to get up-to-date and authoritative information from the component authors. And from my perspective, it's doing discovery, in a sense, is a symptom of something is being wrong. The information that is important isn't being communicated well, or it's not available. And that's kind of what I want to solve here on behalf of at least this community. Now, the discussion here seems to be about, and please correct me if I understand something, just shoot in, because I'm trying to understand something and I need corrections. This perspective I'm seeing here is from a downstream software manufacturer's perspective, trying to figure out where's the software that an SBOM describes. Like you have an SBOM document and you want the components connected to it, not the other way around. Like if you have a tarball and I can take a SHA-256, check some of it to quickly get the hold of the associated SBOM is not part of the question here. Is that we're talking about discovery of artifacts like the software distribution packages, Debian packages, tarballs, RPMs. Is that what we're doing here, or is it both, or what?
We have the Perl PURL, package URL, that is
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Set up a unique identifier based on, for instance, CPAN, right?
Yep.
But what we're doing here is from an identifier like that or a range of other identifiers, trying to find where can I download the artifacts I need, or where can I query the artifacts I need.
Okay, but that's a package URL project. This related to the package URL groups.
Package URL tells you where you got a package from and gives a unique identifier.
Or
But
okay,
what we're talking about here is where do I get all the metadata for a given package or product?
Yeah, okay. So let's see. I want to find the pack. Yeah, I have a package URL, and as far as I'm understood it, the package URL is for specifying a name within like a component name and version within a specific namespace, so that you can leave it to the tooling that is specifically made for that namespace to figure out what the actual component, where it comes from, and download it and all that stuff. That's my interpretation of package URLs.
I don't think package URL is meant to be resolvable into anything. It's made that based on your data, you create a unique identifier, but you don't use, I think we had that discussion somewhere in Slack, whether or not to use it for actually downloading packages. I don't think that was the intent.
That's so for me, that's a question whether or not the tooling supports something like that. But the intention is to identify it, and I'm completely with you on that. But I'm struggling with bridging the step from having the identifier into figuring out where to query something to figure out what it belongs, what artifact this package URL belongs to or refers to, and to do that without speaking with the native tooling seems to me like that. Like I can tell you for a fact that within CPAN, that's you will struggle, because there's some really strange stuff going on with version numbers that we have to do because of historical reasons. Like the Perl and CPAN community is completely obsessed with backwards and forwards compatibility, and we have had people uploading packages that have very strange versions numbers that we somehow have to index correctly anyway and support. And we can only do that with the tooling that uses this. So in a sense, if you want to refer to something on CPAN with a package URL, that's fine. But having any way to discover what this actually refers to without using the native any of the native tooling is a little bit of a gamble. You'll do okay. 99% of the chance situations, but the moment you step outside of the norms, like for example, you have your own private in business mirror of packages. Say, for example, you want to have a control of what kind of software components your stack uses, and don't want to willy-nilly download stuff from the internet. Then you then need to add some extra information to the package URLs to notify that, to specify that you're using an internal mirror, and then the tooling needs to be able to handle that in a sense, and it's a whole can of worms in that direction. So
should we try to sort this out?
Is this a centralized index you guys are planning, like for all software?
Not centralized. I want it as, that's why I have a DNS domain name. So for CPAN, it should probably be something CPAN. Centralized.
Okay.
There are projects that discuss for vertical niches properly regulated by the state to create central repositories, but I don't think that's within our.
That sounds like a horrible thing, but okay.
Every time someone tried to create a global directory, it has failed. We have DNS and that's it. It's my point of view. Let them try. But how would a CPAN Perl look like? Do you have an example somewhere?
Yes, we actually got into the Perl spec just after FOSDEM in February. So you have examples in the spec right now, and Perl
So
implementation.
you actually
of
got
this.
Philip to commit something. That's
Oh
impressive.
yes, yeah. I was I had a beer with him after the.
Oh, that's why I haven't got any commits. I haven't given him beer. Okay, basic mistake.
Yeah, and I have to admit I also pushed it pretty hard, and but we managed to get it to the committed just after FOSDEM. So, but I lost my thread for a moment here. The package URLs, as far as my hope is for the CPAN community, is that other ecosystems and users that require some Perl tooling, for example, can refer to it. Perl tooling that is published on CPAN can refer to it as a package URL. But that's only useful if the package URL can be resolved somehow, right? And that's where making the artifacts available is like useful. But there are several situations, several scenarios where I'm trying to figure out here, and one of them is the situation where you have the SBOM with the package URL in it, or just the package URL. And then there's the situation where you have an artifact and you want to get the associated metadata. And from the other side, like from the developers, probably open source authors perspective, is how can their information be made available throughout the whole chain? Because this is like the chain has multiple steps in it, and some of them are circular even. Like you can have a CPAN repository that is downstream of a CPAN repository, but upstream of a Debian repository that is even upstream of another Debian repository. That's possible with how things are actually set up in the open source ecosystem craziness that's out there. So for me, the having a way to find stuff is awesome, but the standards I'm looking for are like API endpoint points that are standard. That's good, but that and with all kinds of directions, what that means, and file system locations. Like if the tarball that you get from CPAN contains an SBOM, and a Debian packager it makes a Debian package, which is basically a build and install step in a specific environment, should they place the SBOM file on the file system in a standard location? That's super useful to know for someone like me. This is like an HTTP URL, that's fine, but not everything happens over HTTP. Sometimes we just download something and we need to create a package that is self-contained and has everything necessary in order to make something work.
Yeah.
And the self-containedness and the independentness of something is very important to me. If it's going to be that we have to depend on some DNS service to function in order to be able to download and install stuff, then that's a single point of failure, and I want as few as possible of those, and ideally none.
Mm-hmm.
Even if DNS is robust like anything else.
Yeah, but then, I mean, if I download something from CPAN, I don't need discovery, right? So, but I need to find
what
the
you get.
URL. Yeah, it depends on what you get. But if I get stuff in there, if I get an SBOM in there, the SBOM is my starting point to find the rest, right? To find the API endpoint. I wrote some examples here, Salve, on the screen, if you see.
Yeah.
So if you follow my discovery, we would create something like this. I haven't checked any syntaxes yet or anything, but let's just brainstorm now. Mm-hmm. Right? And said that, well, you define a name called Tay. It could be a website, it could be a DNS name that resolves into others. But then the for this package, the index file would be at this URL. That could be one solution.
Yeah.
But you could have other mechanisms saying that we don't do discovery. I mean, this is, if I have a Perl in my SBOM, I could create a TAE and try to find it, right? If I use this package as a component in my product. But now if I download this product and I find an SBOM, then we could very well try to include a direct URL within the SBOM saying, here's where you find the rest of the information, or the next version, or whatever. Matt,
Yeah,
you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Olive. I just want, I typed a bunch of stuff in chat, hopefully that'll get captured if it's important to retain.
Oh, thank you.
But we have I'm saying, I'm gonna build upon what you're saying from my perspective. It's what I was trying to say earlier, you have a catch-22 problem. You know, once you have a document someplace, you can create 100 ways to reference it for a CPAN Perl, a Perl, or URL. There are many million ways you can reference it. But the problem is from at time 0, and if the time of bomb generation, when you know, the point is linkage. I'm trying to create linkage from one bomb to another bomb to another bomb to you know, various bomb variants like, you know, VDRs, etc. So I don't have those things in advance. It's a catch-22. I don't know how to create a CPAN Perl to find something that I don't know where it's at in the first place.
Well,
so I need a way to search for it. If I do want to do what you said, as include another identifier in my component, which is not going to be standard for some time until another 1.7 or 2.0 Cyclone comes out.
Yeah.
I need a way to search it. And I'm just pointing out the options are very limited. And what I talked to Jan about extensively yesterday is about how we normalize and identify things in SBOM. And if you look at a component, the only way you identify a component, even a top level component the SBOM describes, is by its name. That's it. That is it. Everything else is an intra-document reference. If you're lucky to get an Omnivore ID or a package URL, you're lucky. But the problem is any component there, you're subject to whatever tool generated the SBOM to give you a great ID and a great Perl to even begin a search. And you're lucky if you have those things, and most times you're not. So you need a robust way to avoid the catch-22 dilemma, which is have a clear way for us to search when you start from nothing. So I can build those references.
Right. But who is starting from nothing now? Is it the developer in a company that puts together their application, or is it someone else?
Well, I think that's what you have to look at is the individual developer. In my terms, it's the product release manager for every product, right. 2,300 products. They're responsible for a release to produce a valid SBOM. So they're the gate. Right.
So,
and I'll let me just say one more thing.
Well, yes.
And they are subject to a CI build process that changes what tooling we have available to generate SBOMs based upon whatever license we have that year for whatever provider. It's Sonatype 1 year, it's SNCC another year, and sometimes they're producing images, and then we have to go do artifact scanning, and then it's twist lock or something like that. So we don't get the same granularity of information from release to release because the tooling can change between those time periods.
Right.
So we have two different use cases we're discovering. Quick, Salve, because Vinod has a raised hand.
Yes. Very quickly. My perspective comes from an open source perspective. So maybe it's a little bit on the side of what we're doing here. because I see that the build step happens at several places. Like it doesn't have to be in a CI environment downstream somewhere. It could be when somebody creates a container of some sort or makes an RPM package. And the important part of the build process for me, if you're going to keep and make sure that the necessary or all the SBOM information is available, the metadata is available, is that during the dependency resolution part of the build, that the resolved dependencies are being kept around or stored or registered in and resulting SBOM or whatever way we do that. So in a sense, when the build process says I'm going to for this module to work, I need this module B, C, and D versions that at minimum, and then do whatever is necessary to get hold of those, for example. And then we get a resulting SBOM out of that, a resulting build output that not only describes what was part of like the final constellation of files and libraries and dependencies, but also like where it came from and all that good stuff that you would expect to have in a complete SBOM. And that stuff could be split up in small kind of bits depending on what kind of thing you're doing. If you're making a container that has everything installed, then the SBOM really requires everything. And whatever happens downstream at the business, that's also part of the problem. But for me, if the downstream doesn't get the information that I'm talking about, then downstream, the businesses out there, the release managers are forced to figure out what just ended up in their lap. And that's something I think is deeply unfortunate. And I would love to see that something like this or in general would make it helpful to not happen, help in such a way that we don't have to do reverse engineering of containers or figure out what the file, which package of file belongs to and what version and all that stuff.
Salve, I have to cut you off there.
That's fine.
We're running out of time. I'm sorry. Vinod.
Yeah, so going back to the original question of Mark regarding the CVS profile, I think we need to think or discuss what should be the core features or MVP of the transparent exchange API, like is the profiling is part of core feature or not? And with regards to the other discussion going on, again, I feel like this is more like a product SBOM versus library SBOM. I would consider like it is a bit complicated in different ecosystem how the dependency resolution works during the build time and those kind of information who can benefit. I really think we may need to incorporate all these differences and may need to consider a unified way to query the SBOM. Yeah, that's all from my side.
Yeah, I think we have, as I wrote here, two different requirements we need to handle from a consumer standpoint, customer or business, I would say. I mean, the downstream. One is to get the official signed documents. The other one is to be able to query stuff.
Yeah.
I think those are two different things and we need to handle them. And I think being able to query is the what we call the insights part of the API.
Yeah, so I think there is a value of the library SBOMs and especially when the libraries want to communicate enrich information which may not be available during a product build time or dependency resolution, right? But I think the dependency relationship or other metadata can be differ what a library SBOM may contain with an actual product SBOM. So there can be a bit of complexity around it. That's why I was saying it. But anyway, Pavel has raised hand and peacefully waiting. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I have just sort of few summary questions. So first, like based on discussion, I think it would make sense if we kind of make a starting point here. So I understand for Exchange API, we probably need the Perl thing. So maybe we just say like we'll add an assumption so the Perl exists and then we start. That's just an idea, so we don't kind of delve into this rabbit holes again. And then Ollie, if you could scroll back to where you were, I have like few technical questions. Like first on the DNS, I don't like I don't think that colon, for example, is a supported character for DNS. So to me, what like
No,
yeah.
the DNS is only in the name part of the URI. Here, so colon is not included.
Yeah, but you had like so just correct me if I'm wrong. So if my understanding should be so knowing this TI, we should be able to get to the vendor website, which is always like _TI._TCP, and that would tell us where the transparency exchange is stored, right?
The base URI.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Otherwise, if you have no DNS,
yeah,
you'll use this part, right? The well-known URI.
okay, and then just UUID. Okay, and then my other question there is, let's say we know the Perl, right? But the Perl currently, from what I saw in your example, if you could, yeah, scroll actually at the lines that you were just typing. Yeah, so here, CPAN Perl, PKG, colon CPAN, and then the next line is TI. So basically, the CPAN Perl doesn't tell me this Perl.org thing.
No.
I think this is a gap here.
That's why we need this part, right?
Yes, but where that's the question. Where kind of where is it stored? Where it's coming from? It's not clear. Even assuming I have Perl for this package.
I mean, like according to Perl spec, Perl is supposed to be mostly universal identifier as well as locator. So, but I think that part is still need to be a bit more ironed out, the locator. Like if it is like a CPAN, ideally it should have some default registry location. It's similar to Maven, right? There should be Maven central location, unless you explicitly mention like a mirror URL as an option parameter or something like that, then you can override the default location and things like that. But I think this is an area maybe we need to closely work with the Perl, the spec itself, or in the TC54 working group to figure it out. The gaps there, I don't think we can solve the Perl issue here. Like it's yeah.
Okay,
No,
but
no.
so our assumption is Perl essentially should give this entry somehow.
Ideally,
Like
Perl. So the
yeah.
Perl, right? Recognize Perl. They should have a default repository location for whatever. Like in this case, is a CPAN. CPAN means a CPAN default package registry or location. Like so, yeah. That's my interpretation of the Perl spec. Reading it, I don't know if someone has.
Yeah, but Perl can't be used, the package URL can't be used for discovery, and that's why we're adding a name here for discovery. And this part is only a unique identifier. Friends, we're running out of time. I'll try to move the notes out of the document in a separate document, and I'll share that in the Slack channel. I hope everyone is connected to the Slack channel. If you have ideas or comments, please add them as comments in the document and we'll discuss them in the next meeting. I'll try to clarify a few things here, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Thank you.